Hi, I'm Charlie Collins, and we're talking sport. And you're welcome, and we're talking sport today to Chris McNulty from the Donegal News, Tony Boyle, former Donegal and All-Star, and Paul McGovern, who's PRO of St Eunice GA Club and the Ulster Senior League. Good afternoon, guys. You're all welcome. Plenty to talk about, plenty in the news in terms of sport. We're going to start with soccer cross-channel. David Moyes. Was it a good appointment and a bad sacking, Chris? Or a bad appointment and a good sacking?
Bad appointment and a good sacking, I think. Probably the surprise, given the sacking culture that we see across channel, is that David Moyes actually managed to last so long. Like, from day one, David Moyes just didn't look like the right fit for Manchester United. He was under pressure from day one. His transfer dealings that he attempted last year, Cesc Fabregas he tried, Leighton Baines he tried to sign Herrera, Thiago, failed in all of them and ended up paying 27.5 million for Maro and Fellaini, who probably one of the biggest flops in terms of Premier League transfers this season, and one of the biggest buys as well. Like, some of the stories that have come out about David Moyes, you got to feel sorry for the poor guy in a way. Like, I mean, when you hear stories that his players were openly sneering and jeering him from the bench in a Champions League quarter final, it
doesn't say much about the players either,
mind you. I would have to ask you, about the mentality of these players, the so-called superstars and stuff, if this is what's going on. But at the same time, you've got to wonder what David Moyes was at in terms of his training, in terms of his team preparation. Like, some of the statistics are absolutely damning. Everton and Newcastle have both won at Old Trafford for the first time in a long number of years. Stoke City defeated them for the first time since 1984. They were hammered, absolutely annihilated by Liverpool and Manchester City, and I think their win over Arsenal was their only win against other teams in the top 10. And I think the last time I was here, Charlie, we were talking about his preparation, possibly the day or the week they played Liverpool, where he was openly talking that Liverpool were a much better team than United. And okay, he was right, but it wasn't the sort of persona that a Manchester United manager should be given. Like, in Alex Ferguson's 30 odd years, would we ever have heard him saying about any opposition that they were much better, that playing an inferior sort of a thing? Like, it wouldn't happen.
Paul, an interesting theory from someone I was talking to, and there's loads of them. The ball and chain was taken off when Sir Alec left because there was a huge fear factor there at Old Trafford, and he ruled with an iron fist, and if you didn't toe the line with him, out you went. I mean, we saw very good players suffer because of that, and suddenly he was gone, and here was David Moyes coming in. He'd managed Everton, he'd done okay with them, but no respect from the players, and the players took full advantage of the ball and chain, and they thought, we'll take it easy and relax here.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of similarities. If you remember back in the mid-70s when Leeds United, when Don Revie left Leeds and Brian Clough came in, and all the talk about player power, and you're looking at players at Man United, they won a lot of trophies over the years. They were experienced guys. If they see something wrong on the training ground, they're going to say it. And David Moyes' training methods have long been called into question with the injury record of players at Everton and things like that. So from a Liverpool point of view, it was a bad appointment and a bad sacking. I was very happy to see David Moyes instead, because I think David Moyes' mentality as a manager was always, first thing is you don't lose the game.
Yeah.
Whereas I think the Manchester United way was, doesn't matter what the other team score, we're going to score more, we're going to go out and we're going to play attacking football. What you say about Ferguson is 100% right. He was a lot of people say Ferguson dragged Man United to that title last year. He had Robin Van Persie, which, Van Persie had 2 seasons where he was fit. His last season at Arsenal and his first season at United, and when he's fit, he scores goals. And between him and Ferguson, I think they were the 2 main reasons that Man United won a title last year. And with Ferguson leaving, it was always going to be a huge job for anybody to replace him. I probably don't think Moyes was the man. I think they probably needed to go down the foreign route, somebody that was coming in without, being fully aware of the job in hand, but somebody, again, more experienced. Somebody like a Van Gaal, who I know a lot of United fans don't want him, but he's managed at the top level. He's won Champions Leagues. He's managed Barcelona. He's managed Bayern Munich. So from that point of view, an appointment like that probably would have made more sense. But I'm perfectly happy they went with Moyes.
Yeah, absolutely. Tony, kind of neutral here, the Gunners. David Moyes got a short time. I saw another stat during the week which said that his record in terms of wins was better than Sir Alex and several other managers there. I mean, you're an Arsenal, a Gunners fan, and no one could accuse that club of rushing to sack managers, despite the fact in the last few seasons a lot of people have shouted for Arsene Wenger to be sacked. The club have shown a lot of patience with them. Some might say too much patience. What's your overall take of the David Moyes scenario?
Well, my take would be similar to what Liam Brady said last night on the Champions League programme. As an Arsenal fan, quite enjoying the empire crumbling after 20 years, of sustained success. But I suppose from a personal point of view, being involved in sports, being involved in management, it's tough on Moyes, which is a job probably that he couldn't refuse. And as usual, when things don't go well, sort of the players sort of tend to stick together and sort of leave the manager isolated. Yeah. It's slightly different on the professional side, and they're getting paid big money. There's a lot of facets to management at that level.
Or club football, and you've assisted John Joe when he was there. Players can have a big influence on what happens with a manager.
Oh, certainly, Charlie. New managers come in and they have different ideas, and players. Listen to me. The bottom line: if the team's not successful and you're not winning games, the players will sort of. I'll try and maybe take less responsibility, and it's because of the new management and that. And I think it's a similar thing that's happened to Moyes. The results weren't good. Listen, he mightn't have been getting everything right, but he did get a championship winning team from Ferguson. A lot of them were on their way out, but. I think that, similar to as well what Roy Keane said, I think the players had to take more responsibility. They seen that Moyes, the results weren't there, so they sort of didn't give him the full backing that he probably should have got on the field, and let him hung out to dry.
Yeah.
I think, Charlie, the sweeping changes to the backroom staff was another mistake that Moyes made. If it had kept a Mike Phelan and Mullenstein and those guys around, it probably would have suited those more experienced players. The Ryan Giggs, the Rio Ferdinands. They would have had a lot of respect for those guys, and probably less likely to react the way that they have done in recent months. So I think that was a big mistake, not to try and keep one or two of the old guard around. Ryan Giggs, by all accounts, was a token coach. Really wasn't really given that much responsibility. So that probably was a big part of his downfall too.
Chris, I'll just finish with you on it. Van Gaal, as Paul has said, seems to be Sky Sports' favourite for it anyway. They're doing their best to get him appointment, but I have a feeling that the next man coming in is going to even have a tougher job than David Moyes had, because now the automatic thing will be, will Moyes fail, the next man's going to succeed.
Yeah, I think ever since very, very early in the season, Alan Hansen wrote a column, and I think it's the Daily Telegraph, and he said that United had to be very, very wary of what happened to Liverpool back in the early 90s, where the first manager that failed, everybody thought the next guy's going to come in and sure it'll be grand. But all of a sudden, what are we now, 24 years later, and they're, I suppose, on the verge of maybe winning a league title again, but they had that barren spell all off the back of maybe one bad appointment to the next, one appointment not working to the next, and it just sort of spirals, and there is a very, very real danger. Like, there's going to be no guarantees that, be it Louis van Gaal, Jose Mourinho, whoever is going to succeed. Like, he's got a massive job because of...
He's got to clear out. He's got a big clear out job to do.
Well, I suppose he's going to have to have a clear out, because there's a lot of those guys. I mean, last season United won the league, and the likes of Paul Scholes and Ryan Giggs were two of their more influential performers. You've got the likes of Van Persie, who's very, very injury prone. Wayne Rooney, you don't know what you're going to get with him. If he takes to the new manager, well and good. If he doesn't, then he'd as well been shown the door. But I think just on United's season, one big change as well that I think's been underestimated was the departure of David Gill, the chief executive with Sir Alex, because he had been the guy who had negotiated all these transfers. He's a big shot in UEFA, and he's got the contacts and stuff. Ed Woodward came in similarly alongside David Moyes and was a rabbit in the headlights. I mean, all of a sudden, a second week in the job, he's going to Barcelona to try and strike a deal for Cesc Fabregas. I mean, at least if you had David Gill beside David Moyes, they might have had a chance, but
no chance. Jose Mourinho, Tony, he's been annoying me now for most of the season. He's actually got worse, but I thought his performance after their game against Sunderland last week was, I think I described it as pathetic. That's the only word I could think on. He looks as if he just wants to rule the world and do what he wants to do, and everybody else to fall into place. And I think the team's suffering maybe as a result of that.
Yeah, I would have to agree, Charlie. I think when Mourinho appeared on the Premier League scene, first time round, bit of a breath of fresh air, and people like to listen to him talk, and obviously he was successful. I don't know, he seems to come back from Spain where there's a bit of chip on his shoulder. I think he likes that mentality, us against the world. But some of the stuff he came out with, obviously he came out with a statement about Wenger earlier on in the year that sort of irked every Arsenal man. Some people say maybe there was some truth in it, but listen, the Sunderland game, I thought that was, it'll not get much lower than that. Some of the stuff that he was saying after the thing, even his attitude after the match during the week, more or less saying that he was going to pick a second string to head to Liverpool. In a vital game that they're still in the running. Obviously, Paul and Liverpool fans will be happy enough with that. But no, I think first time round he was bearable. But second time round, I don't think people would be too bothered if he wasn't in the Premiership this time next year.
No. Sunderland did you a big favour anyway, Paul.
Huge favour, unexpected, They nearly did us a big favour with City too. They almost got a win there. They still got a draw, so those two results have left the title into Liverpool's own hands. But with Jose, I mean, I don't think anybody at this stage takes anything he says overly seriously. I mean, I'm not expecting that much of a weekend side. If you look at Chelsea's team for the Champions League, Matic has been a great signing. He's cup tied, so he's going to be playing at Anfield. Salah's cup tied, he's going to be playing at Anfield. Lampard and Mikel are suspended. They're going to be playing at Anfield. That's not a bad midfield forward to be starting out with, So Eden Hazard's probably going to play a half an hour at least at Anfield to make sure that he's available for the second leg of the Champions League. So, I think anything Jose says at this stage, I think we've heard it all before.
Pinch of salt. Just stay with you then. Liverpool, 3 games to go, Paul. It's the dream, the stuff that dreams are made of. 11 wins in a row, and it's not that long since Spurs were vying with them for 4th spot in the league, and all of a sudden it's within their grasp. But the interesting thing is, I think they're going to have to win the 3 games to win it.
Very possibly. I still think if they beat Chelsea on Sunday, I think they're going to win it. To me, that's the biggest banana skin. Obviously, Crystal Palace away is a really tough game. I was actually over at the Stoke versus Newcastle game there at Easter weekend, and Newcastle were horrendous. If they would come to Anfield and get a point, I would be mystified. They were absolutely.
It has been known to happen.
They were absolutely awful. But I mean, at the start of the season, I mean, 4th was probably a dream for us. Coming from the previous couple of seasons to get back into Champions League place. Obviously, that was the aim, was to nick the 4th spot. Was it? You didn't know whose spot you were going to take with that 4th spot. You didn't think it was going to be Man United because they were champions. But the run they're on, 11 wins, and they've beaten Man United, they've beaten Man City, they've beaten Arsenal. They've beaten all those teams, beaten Spurs. So they've beaten everybody along the way. But it's when the finish line gets close, the nerves start to kick in. If
you won 14 in a row, Tony, it doesn't matter who you are or who doesn't support you, it's some achievement.
No, it's a great achievement, especially in the Premier League. To be fair, I think the FA Cup final is more interesting than the race to the we'll keep that for another day. But now, in fairness, the run that Liverpool's on, and the big teams have come, and the football that they've played and the goals that they've scored, I still think at times, with the squad that they had, it's a thin squad. Defensively, at times they looked average, but the one thing that Liverpool were fit to do, if they concede 2, they'll score 3, they'll score 4. As we've seen watching them against Arsenal, they can score 5 at times. So listen, you can't take it away from them. To win 14 in a row, and I was talking to a Liverpool man, especially the way Chelsea are acting at the minute. I think it's Liverpool's title, and I hope they beat Chelsea. And what they probably like to do now is go on and win the last 3, and you couldn't argue with that.
And managed, Chris, by a team that Reading sacked. Brendan Rodgers will be a legend. Obviously, if Liverpool won the league, he's made for life as a manager if he takes Liverpool to win this title so unexpectedly. I mean, how things can turn round, I suppose, when we're talking about the likes of David Moyes.
Yeah, I suppose when Brendan Rodgers was appointed as Liverpool's manager, like I'm sure Paul would agree, there's a lot of Liverpool people sort of wondering, where are we going here with this guy, and are we settling for mediocrity? And here he is. I mean, it pains me to say it utterly does pain me, Charlie, but Liverpool,
you wouldn't think to look at you, Chris.
they're a joy to watch. I mean, some of the football they're playing, it is absolutely breathtaking. The likes of Suarez, Sturridge, Sterling, Steven Gerrard again. I think all of us, no matter who we're aligned to, I think we would say Steven Gerrard does deserve to win a Premier League title for alone the loyalty he showed to Liverpool. I mean, in 2005, 06?
2005, it was big talk of going to Chelsea at that
could
summer.
Should have walked away, maybe.
But big payday was on the cards there.
Steven Gerrard is probably one of the greatest midfielders of his generation, and the thing that's missing and the thing that is absolutely driving him is that Premier League title. But going back to your point about Brendan Rodgers, he's been the manager of the season no matter who wins this league. The football that he's played, the results that he's got, and look, if Liverpool get 14 wins out of their last 14, then even I couldn't begrudge them.
It was a great decision to hold on to Suarez, Charlie. If you remember us talking about Suarez, was he staying, was he going? And I said at the time he was staying.
Yeah.
And it's been such a great decision.
An extra pound note could have swung that to you. Wenger had
he was a bit miserable at the time with the extra pound.
I think Brendan Rodgers deserves a lot of credit for the way he handled that whole Luis Suarez thing. Again, an inexperienced manager, he came in and it was very, very clear Brendan Rodgers was the boss. This guy isn't for sale. Doesn't matter who you are, what you are. We're not selling them. And he stuck by Luis Suarez and he certainly repaid him.
Chris, I'll just stay with you. League of Ireland, Harps started well. It's been a struggle in the last few weeks. There's been injuries, there's been suspensions. Scoring goals has been the problem. But I mean, nothing, I suppose, that Ollie didn't alert us that could be a problem for them.
Yeah, scoring goals has been their problem, but a bigger problem has been creating chances. Like aside, they beat Cove Ramblers 5-0 and beat Shamrock Rovers 3-0. But leaving aside those games, Harps have only scored 2 goals. So far this season, which is a bit of a worry. They've been pretty solid defensively, but Ollie had warned us at the start of the season not to take too much heed of those early results because the early season fixture list was pretty kind to them. They're missing though Sean McCarron and Kevin McHugh. Charlie, they scored 21 goals between them last year. I mean, for any team, never mind a team with a skeleton squad like Finn Harps, that's going to be a huge blow. Look, they have struggled, but at the same time, it's been a decent enough start. Solid, if not spectacular. Look, I mean, they're going to run into problems. These injuries and suspensions take their toll. Like, I mean, there's been 7 games already this season. I don't think Ollie's been fit to fill his bench for one of those, that in itself outlines the struggles that he's had. They've had a couple of, I suppose, disappointing refereeing decisions as well. Like last week, the whole entire ground was baffled as to the awarding of the penalty kick in Longford. The previous week, there was an incident where Keith Cowan was sent off pretty harshly, I think, and he's been given a 4-game ban. So I mean, he's missing a month, and that's a position as well of real strength for Harps was centre back. Look, I think though, all in all, Ollie will be quite happy with how he's gone.
Roddy Collins not too happy, I would say, Paul. Derry City, big struggle, can't score either. And Chris was telling us before we started recording here, he's saying there's no point in playing Rory Patterson because he's not going to create chances for his goal scorers.
Yeah, that has to be the quote of the season, I think, at this stage. It's a strange one, I think Roddy arrived with his usual bravado and I think everybody expected a wee bit more from Derry City at this stage of the season, but I mean to leave Patterson sitting on the bench has to be madness. At this stage of the game, that's a man that scored goals everywhere he's been. You've got to put him into your team. Especially a team that needs goals. We're saying about Harps missing Kevin McHugh. To have a striker Patterson, have him sitting on your bench is it's absolute madness.
Crazy. You've got the Ulster Senior League table in front of you there. Just Cockhill's top again, and 3 teams on 7 points, 3 points behind. Are we going to see Cockhill dominate this year again? Drumkeen, Letterkenny, and who else, Paul's chasing there at the moment?
Derry City reserves as well. Now, by all accounts, Derry City last week they were 2-0 down to Cockhill. They came back to 2 each in a game played in McGinn Park on that fine surface up there, and that's one thing that suit Derry is a good surface. Yeah. They'll play football. I don't think it's just going to be as cut and dried maybe as the league was the last couple of years. Letterkenny have strength and Derry seem to be more like the team of 2 years ago. By all accounts, probably should have won that game against Cockhill in that last 15 minutes when they got back to 2 each. They had a lot of pressure on Cockhill, but me and Chris were talking about this coming up in the car. Cockhill have been there. They've been at the top of that league now for the last 3 or 4 seasons. They know what it's about. With Derry, you're never sure week to week maybe what John Quigg and the boys are going to have available to them. But I think every team is almost capable of taking points off each other. Bunagee have run Cockhill very close twice this season already, and Bunagee finished second bottom last year. So it is. And I mean, Letterkenny have beaten Drumkeen, but there's a huge game this weekend. Letterkenny are travelling to Cockhill this weekend, and maybe a draw there opens the door again for Drumkeen and Derry possibly. So we'll have to wait and see.
Donegal League coming to a big finale this weekend too. Tony, in the Premier Division, Rathmullen and Lifford, I think both have to win to play off then for the league title. Michael, it's remarkable how many playoffs there's been in the Donegal League. And I mean, you played in a very good KG Rovers side, and the Donegal League, when it gets to this tail end of the season, you get so many exciting games with so much at stake at the top and the bottom. But the Premier Division has gone to the wire the last few seasons, which is great to see.
Yeah, the Premier League has been very, very competitive, as you say. Whether a one-off playoff at the end is the right way to say it, it's hard to know. But Rathmonnell, under Mark Curran, I was talking to Mark there a couple of weeks ago. I think he retired last year, but I think he's back helping out, and I would say it's helped them. And Lifford's been very strong as well. It's funny you mentioned it. I think it's 25 years since KG were waiting an invite to the dinner dance this year. It's 25 years since KG won the league. And
that was a team and a half.
That was a team and a half. I suppose back then, Charlie, the difference is now I would have probably been the only player in the whole panel that would have been playing Gaelic at the time. It was all soccer, and that made it a lot stronger. But KG were involved in a playoff themselves this weekend. They've a relegation playoff, Division 1 playoff, I think, down in Ballyar against Steel Harp. So they're fighting on a for a different front, But listen, it's good to see the Premiership is competitive, and it'll be interesting finished it.
Absolutely. We'll stay with you, Tony. League finals in Croke Park, the weekend, 2 of them on Saturday. I was talking to Michael McGeehan last night. He's involved with Tipperary. They're playing in the Division 4 against Clare, and then Cavan and Roscommon in Division 3. But of course, Sunday is our focus of attention. You've got Donegal against Monaghan, and then Derry against Dublin, which is interesting. Donegal against Monaghan, I suppose they were always going to be the favourites to come out of Division 2, those two counties, and they have. Does this game mean anything really on Sunday, Tony, do you think?
Well, I think it's a game that Jim will welcome, because there's been a break. There's been a 2 to 3 week break since their last league match. They've had their week away training. I think it's a game. There's still a good 3 week break before the championship. It'll be a chance for some of the boys to blow the cobwebs off, get back, in no better place than Croke Park. The fact that Derry are playing in the second match, it's not a case. I remember being involved in league finals before, and people are saying, do you need it? You were out in championship 2 weeks before, and the other team's getting a look at you. Listen, I don't think Jim will. It's not a case of showing his hand. People know the way Donegal will be set up come championship, more or less the same players. I think the one thing he'll probably not do is, I know Michael Murphy didn't play, I'm not sure anyone else, he'll not risk any of the guys that may be carrying knocks for the championship. But listen, I think it's a bigger one, the second one, for Derry, because Derry have gone really, really well. I think Donegal will beat Monaghan on Sunday. It'll be close, but I think the worry for Derry is if Derry go down after having a good league and possibly showing the form that Dublin showed in the semi-final, if they would end up getting a bad beating, I think that could be psychologically a bit of a setback. I don't think Derry haven't set their sights on one in the league. They've had a good campaign in that. They've had a very, very good campaign, in fact. But if they go down there and get a heavy beating by Dublin, which Dublin have the capability of doing that to any team, But as regards ourselves, listen, I think it's a good run out. Obviously, you don't want to pick up any injuries, but that can happen in training. I think he'll not risk any guys that there's a chance that they're carrying any knocks. But listen, it's nice to get a run out. You still have 3 weeks to regroup then for championship, but I'd be expecting Donegal to win it. Yeah.
Chris, any word on what sort of team he's going to start? I mean, he's been starting as strong as possible team he can, although he's been bringing people in off the bench and that sort of thing as well. Any indication how they're going to start?
Well, he did confirm to us on Wednesday night that he's going to start Patrick McBurty and Ryan McHugh, 2 players that had a great under-21 campaign and have played particularly well for the seniors when they've been introduced. We understand the midfield is going to comprise Rory Cavan and Martin McElhinney, and pretty much everybody else is as you were. Oran McNeilis set to make his first senior start in Croke Park. Christy Toylby alongside him back in Croke Park again after missing all of last year and stuff, but pretty much along expected lines. That's fitness provided. The likes of Michael and Leo McClune struggling a wee bit with injuries, and if they're in any doubt, as Tony said, they just simply won't be risked, because there's too much at stake a month out from Derry.
Yeah, plenty of controversy with the club and the county situation, Paul. I was at the Donald Park on Friday night for the Gweedore St Eunice game, which was a good game, and then I was in Glen on Sunday for Glen Swilly against St Eunice, and about halfway through the second half I was saying to myself, I can understand why Jim McGuinness is iffy about club football. It was tough stuff.
I think it was a humdinger, that
it
one.
Was tough stuff.
Yeah, I mean, I suppose at the end of the day you have to be fair to the club players. It's a huge issue. I think John Harron brought it to national attention last week, but you have to wonder why were 2 games ever set for the weekend, and why they didn't say, well, the Friday one is a starred fixture or whatever. Obviously people going down to watch the games, they want to see the county players playing. You know, when you go down and you see Gidor against St. Eunice, you want to see Rory Kavanagh, Eamon Doherty, the McGees, or McNulty. You want to see those guys on the pitch playing. The clubs want to have their best players available to them. Who'd be a member of the CCC, you know, at the end of the day, but we have to find a happy medium to make sure club players can play football. You know, this thing of having no championship and no nothing during the summer months, to me it's madness not having championship football during the summer when the weather is the best.
The thought struck me halfway through the second half. Michael McGee, my old sparring mate, he said to me one day, we were at a match and it was very tough, he said, "It's no place for mommy's pets." It certainly was no place for mommy's pets. Anyway, minor league final as well, Chris. We watched the minors last Saturday, wasn't it? And first 25 minutes was tough to watch against Armagh. Didn't register a score. All of a sudden then they started to get together. No, Declan wasn't particularly happy with the performance, but a league final against Tyrone always has a good ring about it.
Yeah, it's been a fantastic campaign for the minors. Has to be remembered, they're still playing without Stephen McBurdy. As I keep saying, he's the outstanding minor player in the county. So look, we've got a minor league final without him. I know Declan himself is struggling with a few injuries to key players, but it's been very, very encouraging. You know, I mean, they were really up against it last week without being under pressure, if that makes sense. Like Armagh just let them have the ball from Danny Rodgers' kick-outs. It was amazing to watch. Like Armagh just sat back and invited them on. I suppose for a group of 16, 17-year-olds, it's quite frightening.
We had Martin McHugh on one side of us and an Armagh supporter in front of us, and between the two of them, our heads were sore listening. This football, this is not what we've come to see. But that's football. That's the type of football we're seeing now. I
suppose what it was very heartening was to see Donegal retain their composure and keep sort of patient, because it would be very, very easy at that. In that kind of an atmosphere, wouldn't it, to lose your head and just get sort of very frustrated? But they kept their head. John Campbell got a goal, and what a fantastic performance! And you know, probably unfair to pick out anybody, but you know, he was the standout player. He was the standout player, and the likes of young Cian Mulligan from Gidor and
Conor Morris, another very
player.
He played well against Glenswally on Sunday
very,
as well.
Very heartening, Charlie, to see young players coming through, and again, the fact that they haven't been playing with their best team or with their best squad yet, it does give us very, very good cause for optimism.
Declan's wily old fox, Tony, will he play his full strength side, do you think, at the weekend? The Derry game down the road, that's the one he really wants to win the championship, because he gets over that, he's a good chance of being in an Ulster final.
I would say similar to Jim, I don't think Declan will take any chances. You know, the last time we were speaking, I think Niall Harley's been struggling from Ballyshannon, you know, one of his main midfielders, and that again, listen, he'd like to win the minor league. Playing Tyrone, it's always a good barometer. I know they beat them earlier in the campaign, but like that, 3 weeks time, you know, that's going to be Declan's goal. You get over Derry, and you're in with a decent shout to get to an Ulster final. You know, so I think he'll put whatever kind of the strongest team he can to try and go and win it, but no more so than what Jim on Sunday. 3 weeks is the. 3 weeks is the date that they've been pencilling in, and that's where he'll want to get his strongest team out.
Yeah, Championship hurling gets underway this weekend, Paul, with the Nicky Rackard. And I was talking to Ray Jurek in the park last weekend, and he's frustrated with the way this thing's gone with the draw. They were drawn at home to Roscommon in the first round, who they beat in the final, and then Fingal were parachuted into the competition. There was a redraw, and the two teams that played in the final in Croke Park last June are now playing the preliminary round game down in Roscommon. But he feels that, you know, Donegal are in good shape, and they use Donald Park for their home games, and they have been impressive.
Yeah, I think when Ray first took the job, people thought that he was kind of taking a poison chalice, that, you know, we'd finally won the Laurie Maher after Andrew Wallace led them to that, and that, you know, where could we go from there? But I mean, you know, the 2 years that Ray's been there, the progression has been unbelievable. For Donegal to be up in Division 2B next year, as you know, probably something we thought we'd never see. You know, obviously, over the last couple of years, they've changed the format in a lot of the hurling, and it's probably helped the likes of Donegal progress. Instead of being down in these 8-team Division 4s and stuff, that they've made the division smaller. It's helped counties like Donegal, but I mean, you know, the work that Ray Jurek has done. But I mean, Ray, again, he's left no stone unturned in preparation, you know. So
quietly gets on with it, doesn't he?
Absolutely, you know, it's the job he's done has been amazing, and you know, but the players have rode in behind him too. You know, they haven't rested on their laurels, and the club scene in Donegal's actually improved in the last 3-4 years, and that's been a huge help. Teams like McCool's and St. Unions have improved to get up there and start challenging Burton Satanta, who've always been the backbone of the county squad. So with more teams coming through, Ballyshannon are starting to come through with hurling. So with all that, you know, it's been a huge boost. There's more players than ever playing hurling, getting games in Croke Park. I mean, you know, Sean McVeigh's goal in Croke Park was last year was one of the best goals probably scored in Croke Park last year. So it's all very, very positive. But as you say, two teams that were in a final having to meet in that preliminary round or whatever, it's not.
It's a bit crazy, wrong. Tony, isn't it? It's a bit crazy. There should be some kind of a seeding system there, really.
Definitely. It's a wee bit disappointing to run it off like that.
Yeah. All right, we're going to move on. The man with the finger on the pulse here, Chris McNulty's with us. Jason Quigley is going to turn pro. There's been loads of speculation since the silver medal that this was going to happen, but you're close to the whole situation there, Chris. They finally signed on the dotted line, or have they? Or it's imminent anyway. What's the story?
Yeah, the story basically is he has confirmed that he's turning pro, and he's joined Golden Boy Promotions, who are owned by the former 10-time world champion Oscar de la Hoya. It's, as opposed to put it back in football parlance, it's maybe like a young footballer signing for Barcelona. Like he's gone to the biggest boxing team in the world, and it's
enough about Liverpool.
But you know what he's done? Like he's joined the biggest boxing team in the world, and the world's this guy's oyster, Charlie. Like I've spoken about him here before. He's the top amateur boxer, or was the top amateur boxer in the world. Although we lost that world final last year to the Kazakh, the point system was such, like he had 32 fights unbeaten, and like his record at amateur boxing, really bar the Olympics, he had done all he could, and I suppose that was the one thing that was maybe pulling him back towards amateur all the time, was the lure of the Olympics. But there was so much that could go wrong for him, and these offers were coming flooding in, and it was quite simply he had to strike when the iron was hot. And I suppose now in the next couple of months we await to see what lies ahead for Jason Quigley. I mean, given that he's with De La Hoya, I mean it'll certainly not be about in a parochial hall somewhere in front of a couple of hundred people. Like sure. Jason Quigley's first bout will be well worth the watching. And
I suppose the disappointing thing from him, I actually met Patsy at the day that he boxed in the World Finals up at Patsy McGonigal up at a cross country up in Newry, and Patsy said that we talked briefly, and he said, it's a gold medal for him in Rio. That was the plan ahead. So it's a disappointment, for the likes of Patsy, who's been involved with the Irish team in the Olympics, and it's disappointment, I would say.
I suppose for us all, in a way, Tony, but that's been selfish because we want to see him go and win a medal at the Olympics.
As Chris says, anything could happen. Anything could happen in the run-up. You don't win your Irish national championship, because of the standard it's in Ireland, and he misses out in the Olympics, and he might have missed the boat getting probably the kind of deal that he got. So from his own personal point of view, if he feels.
And it's interesting, Tony, for someone like yourself that played at the highest level at the amateur and GAA, and now we have this whole debate about Sky coming in and what's the next, where's it going, and people saying, well, it's going to go professional and all that sort of thing. If you think about it, I don't know how many will be at the league finals, but if you talk about championship in Croke Park for quarter finals and semi-finals and finals, the revenue that's been generated, and they're coming to watch the people who are playing, not everybody else. And the people who are playing, okay, they're better looked after now than they were in certain ways, but they're still not getting paid the way that people who are half full in stadiums are.
But listen, it's always going to be a debate, Charlie. I think the Sky deal, if it takes more money into the association, and from someone that's involved at club level and the finance end as well, if it takes more money down to the grassroots level, I don't think it's ever going to get to the situation where players will be played. Obviously, they're a lot better, or looked after better than we have been, that we were even 20 years ago. But because you don't have the global sort of the catchment for the JA games, I don't think so. And then the problem you have, listen, there's already a big divide between county players and club players. Aye. Paul's already mentioned just as regards club fixtures, like, do you want a situation where your club players don't really play at all for your club, be it like a province type thing that you have in rugby, and that's the worry that you have,
That'll take the good out of it. Paul, I mean, the Jason situation, I don't think anybody can blame him. It's disappointing to see him going and maybe not going for that Olympic medal, but as Chris and Tony have said, really no option.
Yeah, I think, as Donegal people, we all love the thought of anybody from Donegal going off the Olympics, especially somebody that had a really great chance of a gold medal. We probably would win that Olympics as a favourite. But sports people are also, in precarious position that one injury can end your career. I think probably, one thing Jason Quigley did, he put a lot of thought into this. He really, this has been on for months. He had to make, took a long time to make a decision, but probably made the right one. Signed up with a very good stable there. I was just looking at some of the names that are there. Amir Can, Lamont Peterson, Ponce de Leon, that's Bernard Hopkins, Pali Malinagi, Anthony Agogo's gone there after being at the Olympics. So, he's in the right place. He's going to get the very, very best of training. He's going to be given every chance. The one thing about Jason Quigley is he is 110% dedicated to becoming a world champion. So if avoiding injuries and everything else, I think he'll achieve that.
Thanks, Paul. We're just going to finish up now in a couple of minutes, Tony, but I just want to pay a bit of a tribute to John Hanigan, who passed away earlier this week. A very good friend of mine and somebody known to all of us. And I suppose I'll start with you, Tony, because a few years back, I think it was the Donegal Democrat, or maybe it was your paper, Chris, that did 125 the best Donegal players. I think maybe the Democrat did it. Number 1 was Martin McHugh. Number 2 was Tony Boyle. And number 3 was John Hanigan. And I suppose what's significant about that is that number 4 was Anthony Malloy. So you had 3 people who were involved in the 92 team, and that's not surprising that they were up there given, the aura that was around you guys and the talent that you had. But Hanigan was stuck in the middle of it, I suppose, which speaks volumes for the type of footballer and the type of man he was.
Oh, it does, Charlie. It's very, very sad news on John's passing. John's a fella that I got to know by playing with the county.
Big fan of yours.
By playing with the county. Obviously he was way before my time and I wouldn't have known much, but I got to know him at county games and after county games, and John come up and give you a wee bit of advice, never impose himself on you, see how you are and how you're feeling, and always there to ask questions, when I came into the scene and young. But you've made the point of being in the top 3 of all time at that stage, all time players. Played county minor, county senior, managed the county the county team, and obviously a massive part of the St Eunan's club as well. So it's a massive loss to the.
And never lost
family.
the passion for it, Tony. I mean, he's a good friend of mine. I know him for all my life, basically. He never lost that passion for County Donegal. I mean, one in 92 and one in 2012. It was like manna from heaven for John Hanigan.
Yeah, it's funny because I was talking to my father about him last night, and he was saying that the last game he was at, I think it might have been the Tyrone game last year. John, of course, was a couple of rows behind him and made a point of coming down and saying hello and that, But no, the passion that he had for football was just unreal, And as I say, it's a massive loss for his family first and foremost, but for all Gaels within the county, it's
absolutely.
a massive loss.
A huge blow to St Eunan's GAA club, Paul.
Absolutely. John was one of the first members of our club's Hall of Fame. I think, if you ask a lot of people who's Donegal's best player in the 1960s, every one of them would say John Hanigan. I think it was John McConnell had it on Facebook there that when they were doing the Donegal team of the millennium, that John Hanigan was the only player who was nominated for all 14 outfield positions in the team. He was just he was an outstanding club member. He was an outstanding footballer. He was an outstanding family man. He was just a legend and a gentleman. Absolutely.
And Chris, he's a funny guy, John. I mean, I've travelled the world with him on golf tours and shared rooms with him, and the crack with John. I mean, he's a legend in every sort of way, as a man and as a footballer and as a golfer and just as a person. But he always played it down in terms of his ability, and one of the great sayings he had was when he was playing for the county, it was harder to get off the team than get on the team. But I think that was just because, I mean, as Paul said, he could play any position and he had a huge talent, but he was never one looking for all the glory and all the praise and that sort of thing. That just wasn't in him.
Yeah, and I suppose to look at his record, like, it's amazing to think that a guy in his era played 114 times for Donegal. I mean, there were no qualifiers in those days. McKenna Cup was straight knockout, and he played
15 years, I think, or 16
consecutive championship campaigns. I mean, that's akin, I was just saying on Twitter last night, it's akin to some young guy, like we'll say Darragh O'Connor, making his debut this year and still playing championship football coming in the year 2030. Like, it's amazing what he done.
Football was a lot tougher back then.
And I suppose as well, Tony, in an era where, medical teams and doctors and stuff, I mean, they weren't about you had the man with the magic sponge and stuff, like, but, just we were talking in the office about John yesterday, Charlie, like, he was one of those guys you'd have popped in and out every now and again, and it was a joy to be in his company. Like, I suppose I didn't have the memories of John Hanigan playing football, but the knowledge that he was fit to impart onto someone like me, and like it was amazing to spend 5 or 10 minutes in his company just talking football. Incredible. And hearing his sort of opinion, like when in 2011 Jim was absolutely knocked from pillar to post with these tactics and stuff. To hear someone like John Hanigan sticking up for Jim McGuinness, it was really sort of I don't know.
A great saying of his at that time was, "Do these people not realise it's about winning the match?" So he took a very pragmatic view, and he'll be badly missed, John Hanigan. And thanks, lads, for paying that nice tribute to him. To Claire and Adrian and Damien, who'll miss him most, and his 3 sisters as well. An awful blow, and an awful blow to us all who knew him, because he was fantastic fella. That's it from Talking Sport for this week. We'll be back with more shortly. Thanks to my guests Chris McNulty, Tony Boyle and Paul McGovern for coming in. All the best for now.